tonight, we are not talking about missiles. We are not talking about sanctions. We are not even talking about diplomatic summits. Tonight we are talking about one strait that quietly became the choke point determining which nations rise and which nations fade, and how control over 500 miles of water is reshaping global power faster than any war could. Because when China began its push to dominate the Indo-Pacific, Western strategists believed the contest would be won through aircraft carriers, military alliances, and economic pressure. The plan depended on one assumption: that sea lanes would remain open, trade would flow freely, and no single country could strangle the arteries of global commerce. That assumption is collapsing, and the collapse started in a place most people never think about until it's too late. Hello there, I'm Richard Maddow, and welcome to another round of Truth Uncomfortably Served. You know, that feeling when you realize your entire economy depends on a waterway narrower than most highways? Yeah, buckle up. At first, it didn't look dramatic. No invasion, no blockade, no declaration of intent. Just infrastructure, ports expanding overnight, shipping terminals multiplying, dredging operations that never stopped. And here's the key detail most strategists missed while they were busy counting aircraft carriers and playing risk with outdated maps. China wasn't just building capacity. China was building dependence. The kind of dependence that makes breaking up harder than any Taylor Swift song. Because the Malacca Strait, that narrow passage between Malaysia and Indonesia, carries 1/3 of global maritime trade, 80% of China's energy imports, 60% of Japan's, the entire industrial lifeline of South Korea. And China realized something the West is only now beginning to understand, probably while checking their Amazon delivery status. You don't need to control a strait militarily if you control everything around it economically. It's like owning all the parking spots around a stadium. Sure, people can still go to the game, but you're the one collecting the fees. Geography made this inevitable. The strait is only 1.5 miles wide at its narrowest point. For perspective, that's about the distance between your couch and the refrigerator if you're really committed to avoiding exercise. Over 100,000 ships pass through annually. There is no realistic alternative for most of that traffic. Rerouting around Australia adds 3,000 miles, weeks of delay, costs that break supply chains. So, whoever influences what happens in and around Malacca doesn't just affect shipping. They affect prices, availability, industrial output, strategic autonomy. Basically, they affect whether your next iPhone arrives on time or becomes a collector's item before you even order it. And China spent decades quietly positioning itself to be that influence. 2 decades. That's longer than most people keep their New Year's resolutions. And Beijing kept building. Instead of asking whether to secure the strait, Beijing focused on how comprehensively. Port investments across Southeast Asia, infrastructure loans that turned into strategic footholds, naval facilities disguised as commercial ventures. It's the geopolitical equivalent of moving in one toothbrush at a time until suddenly all your stuff is there and nobody remembers agreeing to it. And none of it required a single shot fired. This wasn't aggression in the traditional sense. It was encirclement through economics. Death by 1,000 infrastructure projects. And by the time rival powers noticed the pattern, the network was already operational. Surprise! Within years, China had transformed its position from regional player to regional landlord. Energy tankers that once worried about Chinese naval interference now depended on Chinese-built ports for refueling. Nations that feared Chinese expansion now relied on Chinese investment to keep their economies functional. It's like being afraid of your gym trainer, but also needing them to unlock the equipment. And the strait itself became ringed by infrastructure Beijing had either funded, built, or gained access to through agreements most governments didn't read carefully enough. You know, the classic terms and conditions situation, except the terms include your entire economic sovereignty. That single fact changed the strategic equation. The United States could patrol the waters with the most expensive boats ever made, but China was embedding itself into the land. It's hard to win a naval game when your opponent is playing Monopoly and already owns Boardwalk. But China's strategy didn't stop with infrastructure, because apparently that would be too simple. When critical minerals became the new oil, Beijing moved faster than any competitor. Rare earth processing, lithium refining, cobalt supply chains. All of it funneled through trade routes Beijing could influence. And suddenly the conversation wasn't just about blocking ships. It was about controlling what those ships carried. Because modern economies don't just need energy. They need batteries, semiconductors, advanced manufacturing inputs. You know, all those things that make your phone smarter than most people's refrigerators. And China positioned itself at the center of all three. It's like controlling the flour, the yeast, and the ovens, then asking if anyone wants to discuss bread prices. This wasn't symbolic. It was structural. Because you can have the strongest navy in the world, the biggest flag, the most patriotic commercials during football games. But if your factories can't get the materials they need, your economy stalls. And when economies stall, governments fall. China understood this equation before most Western capitals even realized the game had changed. Which is why analysts now refer to the Malacca Strait not as a shipping lane, but as a pressure point, one Beijing can squeeze without ever closing it. Like a remote control you can't find when you really need to change the channel. Meanwhile, rival nations started waking up, probably after their third cup of coffee. The United States began talking about freedom of navigation. India accelerated its navy modernization. Japan quietly expanded its defense partnerships. But here's what made every response incomplete, and this is where it gets uncomfortably funny. They were all reacting to a system that was already entrenched. China didn't need to stop ships. It just needed to make everyone nervous about what would happen if it decided to. That fear alone shifts behavior. It's the geopolitical version of your check engine light. Nothing's broken yet, but you're definitely driving differently. At this point, military planners in Washington and Tokyo began running scenarios, which is Pentagon speak for very expensive brainstorming sessions. What happens if tensions escalate? What happens if China decides to inspect cargo, delay certain shipments, prioritize friendly nations? The answer was always the same: disruption, not total blockade. Just enough friction to break supply chains, spike insurance costs, force companies to reroute. And rerouting at scale isn't a logistics problem. It's an economic crisis with a customer service hotline that doesn't answer. This is where the story gets even more dangerous. And I mean that in the way that realizing you left the stove on while you're already on the highway is dangerous. Because China didn't just build leverage over the strait. It built redundancy for itself. The Belt and Road Initiative wasn't just about goodwill or making friends. It was about creating alternative routes that bypass Malacca entirely. Pipelines through Pakistan, rail lines through Central Asia, ports in the Indian Ocean. While the rest of the world remained dependent on the strait, China was engineering its way out of that dependence. It's like being the only person at the party who knows where the second exit is. That asymmetry is the trap. China can threaten the flow without suffering the same consequences. And threats don't have to be spoken to be effective. Just the knowledge that Beijing could act is enough to make corporations think twice. Governments hedge their positions. Allies reconsider their commitments. This is strategic coercion without coercion being named. The implication game played at a nuclear-armed international level. And here's the part most people outside defense circles don't fully grasp. Mainly because defense circles use words like literal and maritime choke point instead of narrow water and boat highway. For Southeast Asian nations caught in the middle, this isn't theoretical. It's daily reality. They need Chinese investment to grow. They need American security to stay independent. And they need the strait to remain open to survive. That three-way dependence makes neutrality impossible. Every choice alienates someone. Every alliance creates vulnerability. It's like having divorced parents who both want you at Thanksgiving and neither accepts, maybe I'll just stay home as an answer. So when China offers infrastructure deals, those nations accept, not because they trust Beijing, but because refusing means falling behind. And when the United States pushes back, those nations nod politely, then sign the agreements anyway. Because for them, the Strait isn't a strategic debate over expensive coffee in Brussels. It's their economic lifeline, and Beijing knows that. Which is why Chinese diplomacy in the region isn't about friendship. It's about necessity, the kind of relationship where you're not friends, but you definitely need each other's Wi-Fi password. This created friction inside Western alliances, which is diplomatic speak for everyone arguing in meetings that accomplish nothing. Some partners wanted harder pushback against Chinese expansion. Others worried that confrontation would backfire, forcing Southeast Asia to choose sides in a way that benefits Beijing. The debate paralyzed action, and paralysis is a strategic advantage for the side already moving. It's hard to win a race when you're still in the parking lot arguing about who's driving. But China's approach also came with risks, because nothing this ambitious ever goes perfectly. Overreach invites backlash. Dependencies can be reversed. Infrastructure built in foreign countries remains vulnerable to shifting political winds. And Beijing's growing assertiveness has done something unexpected. It unified opposition that was previously scattered. AUKUS formed. The Quad deepened. Japan and South Korea edged closer despite historical tensions that make your family reunions look peaceful. Not because of American persuasion, but because of Chinese pressure. Funny how that works. Which raises a question analysts are now asking quietly, probably in secure conference rooms with bad lighting. Did China move too fast? Because there's a difference between building influence and telegraphing intention. And once intention becomes clear, resistance organizes. The Strait that was supposed to be a silent advantage is now a debated flashpoint. Every naval exercise gets scrutinized. Every port deal gets challenged. Every policy shift gets gamed out for strategic implications. It's like trying to surprise someone after you've already told them you're planning a surprise. Yet here's what makes this so dangerous. And I mean genuinely keep you up at night dangerous. Even with pushback, the fundamentals haven't changed. Ships still need to pass through. Economies still depend on flow. And China still controls more of the surrounding infrastructure than any competitor. Reversing that would take decades and investment no one has committed to yet. So the leverage remains. The trap is set. And everyone's just hoping nobody trips it. Wars are often decided not by who fires the most shots, but by who controls the choke points. And right now, China is closer to controlling the most important choke point in the global economy than any power has been in modern history. Not through conquest, not through invasion, but through infrastructure, investment, and strategic patience. That's why Western militaries can patrol the waters all they want. But China is shaping the future because navies control what's on the surface, but influence controls what's beneath, around, and dependent on the flow. So the real question going forward isn't whether the Malacca Strait will remain critical. It's whether the world will accept Chinese influence over it, or whether that influence will trigger a confrontation no one can afford. And that's a gamble with no good outcomes, because backing down surrenders leverage, but pushing back risks escalation in waters where mistakes don't stay regional. They go global faster than a viral video, except with nuclear submarines instead of cat memes. This has been Richard Maddow bringing you Truth Uncomfortably Served. Leave your thoughts below, preferably before the next maritime crisis makes this conversation obsolete, because geography doesn't care about your feelings, and neither does the shipping schedule.